So we're recording now, and it is January 5th, and I am speaking to Louise Brown, who lives at 2004 Russell Street.
Live at 2004 Russell Street. I was born in Wilmington, North Carolina, and what else can I say about myself?
Okay. The year you were born?
Yeah, well, I was born December 21st, 1921.
And how many were in your family?
There were 16 in the family, 9 girls and 7 boys.
Louise, could you tell me how you and your husband met?
Yes, we were both on our way to school at West Virginia State College. I was coming from Wilmington, North Carolina, and we were both riding the bus. He lives in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. So we met on the bus on the way to West Virginia State College. And when I got there, I couldn't find my suitcase, and he came over, and I started crying, and he came over and said, "Come on, I'll help you." And I couldn't remember what it looked like because it was brand new and I'd never used it before. So we looked all over the place, and he finally found it and helped me to find it. That's how we met.
Okay, thank you. You were married?
Yes, we left school, and he was going to graduate in June. And right after he graduated, we slipped off to Florence, North Carolina, to South Carolina, to get married. Here he comes now.
Okay.
And because we couldn't get a marriage license in North Carolina, we were too young.
That's great.
My name is Frank Brown. My middle name is Osborne. The initial is O. And I was born June 25th, 1920, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina.
Okay, so tell me how you came to be in Berkeley.
I had graduated from West Virginia State and was in the process of attempting to set up some electronic business in Winston-Salem. My sister, who was living in another city at the time, came by and told me that she was traveling with Mrs. Bethune, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Mrs. Bethune told her that her nephew was working for the government in the Air Force, and he had taken similar college work such as I had taken, and he applied for the position as an instructor at the Air Force, and he was accepted, and she felt that I should do the same. So I did apply, and I got the job. So I went to, the job was at Chanute Field, which was in Rantoul, Illinois. And this was 1940, the end of 1941. So I know I was there at the beginning of 42. The war had started then. When we first got there, of course, we went into some intensive training that they gave instructors had to do with aircraft. And then after that, I taught in the department, the aircraft department, for some time. And then when the 49th Pursuit Squadron was started being developed in Tuskegee, they brought about a half a dozen of us into an office, and they called it Office of Plans and Training, and we wrote technical material for that school to be used.
Okay. It was a black unit.
And it's a black unit. That's what they call the airmen, the Tuskegee Airmen, down in Tuskegee. Shortly after that was finished, we were shipped off to several other places where we taught. Where I taught in in aviation. I was shipped to Amarillo Field. I was shipped
Amarillo,
to,
Texas.
and what else? Lincoln Air Base.
Lincoln,
And,
Nebraska.
and Lincoln, yeah, Lincoln Air Base is in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then I was shipped back to Rantoul, Illinois, where we lived in Champaign, Illinois. And at that time, the war was over, and of course, there was no need for all these instructors and so forth. So I heard about a technical school in Chicago called Midway Technical Institute, and it taught courses in television. So I went there, and I became an instructor there in television. And I stayed there for a few years, and then I went to Practical Trades Institute, where they not only taught trade subjects, but they also did a lot of research. And there we did a lot of research on picture tubes, radioactive gas diodes, and things of that sort. And because we were in that particular field, one of the fellows who worked there wanted to come west and set up a picture tube processing plant in Oakland. And somehow he persuaded me to come with him. So he and I and his son came here, and we set up in Oakland a picture tube processing plant. So that's the way I got I got out here.
What was the name of the company?
Vactronic Works.
Vactronic Works. V-A-C...
V-A-C-T-R-O-N-I-C-S.
Okay.
Vactronic Works.
Okay.
And I worked there for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years. Even after I said I had planned to set it up, and I didn't know whether I was going to stay or not, but I stayed a year or so after that. And
I was still in Chicago.
she was still in Chicago.
Okay.
She was teaching in Chicago,
Okay.
and she came here and applied here, so she came in and started teaching in Berkeley.
Okay. Around what year was this?
This was about 1950 when she came.
Okay, so 1950, you came...
No, I came in 1950. You came in about 1951.
51,
Okay.
yeah. He'd been here about a year.
Okay. What were your first impressions? Maybe I'll ask you, Frank, and then Louise
Berkeley.
of Berkeley. When you first came here.
First, let me tell you the impression of the weather.
Uh-huh. What do you think about that? Was it nice after Chicago?
I froze during the summertime
Oh, okay.
and cold during the...
And hot.
Well, the hot during the winter. But what about coming from Chicago, we had been living in Chicago, and coming from Chicago,
The
weather
weather was really
in the wintertime is cold,
Mm-hmm.
real cold. And in the summertime, it gets hot, hot, hot. So with those two extreme weathers come here, the weather is not too cold, not too hot. Here's December looking weather out there. So after a couple of years, I don't think I could handle that anymore. So so we stayed here. She taught at Berkeley, at the public schools in Berkeley. And I worked for this company for a couple of years. And then I got a job teaching electronics at Stockton College in Stockton.
Okay.
And I stayed there a couple of years. And I tried to resign the first year. They said, "No, Frank, you can't resign. You're the only black person on the staff. So you just didn't give us enough notice." That was the president telling me that. I said, "Well, okay, I'll try a little longer." But anyway, they got us to come down and bring her, and if she would come down, they offered her the top of the pay with the teacher staff. plus a place to live. I mean, but that weather, we came down to test it one summer, and that weather was
That
too
dust
hot. So we said,
was
no,
hot
no,
and
no.
I want to
dusty.
live there.
So that's why we're
So
still
I
here.
said, no, we'll
Okay.
stay
And
in
I
Berkeley.
And I came back here and I got a job and said, well, I said, I want a job, any kind of job. I just can't stay down at the Stockton any longer. I stayed down 1 year, 2 years. First year I tried to resign, and then the president said, no, you can't.
So we ended up
So
in
we-
Berkeley.
So I came back, and I got Oakland said, well, we'll hire you, but we don't have anything in your field. Said, if you want to work in the industrial arts department or teach something else.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know.
Where in Oakland was this? The Oakland Unified School District?
Yeah, Oakland Unified
Okay.
School District, yeah. So I did, and after working at one of the junior highs for about a year, they found something for me at one of the high schools in teaching electronics. So and that's where I stayed.
And in the meantime, I was at the elementary school. I was at Lincoln
Lincoln.
Elementary School in Berkeley.
Okay. And that was in the early 50s still?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was in the
Very
early
So you
50s.
taught when it was Lincoln?
And I
okay.
had at that time, they had very few, they only had 2 black teachers in the system. And they had no room for anyone else, they said. But my supervisor from Chicago told me that I'd have difficulty getting a job here for that reason. So they gave me all the credentials I need to give to the person who was personnel director.
Okay.
And when I handed them over, their eyes got big as teacups, and they gave me a job. Even though they didn't have a classroom job, they gave me a job doing home teaching.
Mhm.
So I started out doing home teaching with youngsters who were ill. And that they discovered that in the meantime I had a credential in for the mentally handicapped. And very few people were holding credentials in that field at that particular time. So a vacancy became available, and I moved into that spot at Lincoln School. And I stayed there for quite a while. And that's awfully low.
Yeah.
But anyway, then I moved into the elementary grades and spent my time there. And during integrations of the schools, I stayed at Lincoln until the year of integration. And that year, I took a sabbatical.
What year was that? 63?
When it was
64?
63 when schools were integrated. 60. Oh Lord, I need.
You
See,
know,
those are
I'll
the
check.
records that
Probably
are
about
in the
63.
garage.
Okay, so you
Yeah.
stayed until Lincoln became integrated. Right,
Yeah,
okay.
I was
Yeah.
there during the year of integration.
Okay, during
Because
the
I
year.
worked on the
Okay.
committee, we both worked on the
Worked on
committee
the
for
committee.
integrating the
Okay,
schools. And so after that, I when I returned, I went to Jefferson School. And
How long were
Stay.
were you on sabbatical?
I was on sabbatical for a year.
1 year. Okay,
Yeah,
1 year
1
sabbatical.
year.
Okay, and then you could.
And when I came back, the schools were integrated, so
Okay.
they transferred me to Jefferson School. But both of us were on the committees for integration of the schools. And NAACP, of course, was very active in that process. Frank, you can tell.
Yeah,
a great deal
actually,
more about
I'd
this.
like you to tell me a little bit about that process of going through integration in
Integration
Berkeley
of
schools.
Well, I'm not sure. I off the top of my head, I can come up with very much in terms of
Well,
what took place during integration. I know we met a lot of times. We talked about a lot of different things that should happen, and I know they eventually did integration by moving kids around in schools, taking the schools that used to be Lincoln, it's Malcolm X now, and sending them to other schools and back there, and all, shifting them all over. They did that. As a matter, Berkeley was one of the first cities, sizable cities, to do a full-scale integration.
but we worked for a solid year. Yeah, you didn't work as much as I did on that. They formed committees all over the city, and we met on a regular basis with ideas as to what should be done. Marie Fielder headed that. Marie Fielder was in the education department at UC Berkeley.
Okay, could you spell the name for me?
Yeah,
Marie.
F-I-E.
Marie.
Marie, M-A-R-I-E.
Mhm.
Fielder,
Fielder.
Fielder.
Thank you, okay.
And she worked, we met at Lincoln School, and as I say, between Lincoln School and Longfellow schools. And committees were set up all over the cities, and they worked together to get up ideas. Many ideas came about as to how this should be done. And but was Roy president of the NAACP at that time? Roy Nichols.
Roy Nichols, okay.
Yeah, Roy Nichols. I know you've heard his name
Yes.
I
before.
don't think Roy was
Yeah,
ever
Roy
president.
was. Yes, he was.
Mary Jane Johnson was president.
Mary Jane. Well, yeah, Roy came along. Mary Jane Johnson was
Frankie
president.
Jones was president.
That's the NAACP.
Oh yeah, okay.
Anyway, you can see now, where was I?
Okay, Roy Nichols, well, then.
Yeah, committees were set up all over the city, and the Board of Education listened to the types of things that were being suggested. NAACP took the, your National Association for the Advancement of
right.
Colored People. And at that time, Roy Nichols, who was minister at Downs United Methodist Church, took the leads in presenting the plan to the Board of Education. And the Board of Education accepted it. And then committees were formed to work on this
Okay.
all over the city again. And that generally is how the integration plan took place in Berkeley. And of course NAACP took a leading part in that for a long period of time until, helping them to work out the problems and that type of thing.
Okay. How did you feel about that process?
Oh, it was excellent. The
Good.
process,
Excellent, okay.
it was an
Okay.
excellent process because it not only helped the youngsters in the school, but it helped teachers to get to know each other because all over the city, you see, we found it was a huge, diverse group of people because you see, we got a chance to know a great deal about each other, and parents were involved, so parents from all parts of the city got a chance to
Okay.
know each other, and so it was an exhilarating experience to be involved in that type of thing.
And the amazing thing is that the people all over the city were so active in making this happen. Yeah.
You had
Sounds
some
great.
forward-looking people back there then, I tell you.
Well, you did an amazing
And another
job.
one, George Perry, would be very good in giving her background on
That
this.
George
George
could give you-
Perry?
Yeah, I'm gonna
he
give
could
you-
give you a
I'm
lot
gonna
of
give you, let me
background.
give you his name, George Perry,
Okay,
and I'll give you
can
his
give it-
telephone number. Keep talking
Okay.
to her now.
so, well, this is great. So you worked on the committee as a parent, or did you have children going to the school?
I had one child. We had one child.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Was he going to a public school in Berkeley?
Yes, he would.
Okay.
He went to Franklin first, and then he went up here to the school right up here on Russell Street.
LeConte?
LeConte.
Okay.
And from LeConte he went to Willard. From Willard he went to Berkeley High.
Okay.
In Berkeley High he went to the
So-
University of California, and then the San Francisco State, and he became a doctor. Went to in the army.
Great. Okay.
George's
So you said-
telephone, excuse
Oh.
me. George's
Okay.
telephone number is 582-1736.
1736. And what was his role?
George was, he was a teacher in the system at
Okay.
that time, but later he became
The director of what?
something at Berkeley High, and then he was director of the, what's the name of the school over here on Carlton now?
I don't
The-
know, but when she talked to him, she
Yeah,
get
yeah.
on
Emerson?
No, not
Oh, wait.
Emerson, but
Carlton.
the school for kids who dropped out of Berkeley High.
Oh, the alternative high.
The alternative
Yeah,
high
yeah.
school. He
Alternative
became
high school.
principal
Well,
of the
George
alternative
Principal.
high school. Yes, he
Okay,
was.
okay.
He was principal of the alternative high
Okay.
school.
George Perry. Okay.
So he has a lot of information.
Yeah,
about-
George
not only
can give
that,
you a whole lot of stuff.
But he was
Okay.
also active in NAACP, so
Okay.
he was active in a number of
A lot of
organizations. He can give you a lot of stuff that we
Uh-huh.
can't fill you in on.
Okay.
And we gave you a name of Mary Jane Johnson, too. Now, Mary
Right.
Jane Johnson stayed on Otis Street, right down here on
Okay,
Otis
so
Street.
she's Otis,
And
okay.
she was very active in
She's-
moving. She was a moving shaker in
Yeah.
the city.
Mm-hmm.
And she served on the Board of Education too for a couple
Yes,
of terms.
she
yeah.
was a member, became a member of the Board of Education. So did Roy Nichols.
I think
Nichols-
Roy was
Right,
the
okay,
first.
yeah,
yeah.
he is very famous.
Yes, he
yeah.
went on to the Board of
Okay.
Education. Mary Jane Johnson went to the Board of Education. And she also became president of the Berkeley branch NAACP and was very active in getting an awful lot of things done in the city. There were some other names that I wanted you to have that I jotted
Okay.
down. People who were movers and shakers around here.
Okay,
Doris Tabor is one of them. Doris, and most of Mary Jane Johnson is not living anymore.
She's not living, Mary Jane Johnson.
okay.
But Doris Tabor is,
Mhm.
and Doris lives on Ward Street.
You know what?
Have you had her name?
I haven't, but maybe we could get names afterwards, because
Okay.
I'd like to get your,
Okay, well, that's fine. Stop
okay.
us whenever.
what I really want to know is what your goals were
When you
as
first
parent,
came.
as teacher. Oh, well, actually, we'll stick with the integration, the school integration right now. What you as teachers, as parents, you know, as African American community members, what were your goals in the integration process? What did you want to see as the outcomes?
I'm sure our hopes were to one day see that integration would actually work, because it wasn't working in a lot of places throughout the country, and we thought it was going quite well here, because so many folk in the hills and around were the active movers in helping this thing take place.
And you see, the black kids were in South Berkeley, and that was the only place that you could find them. And they were sending, it was, you know, people felt that they were sending the poorly trained teachers there, you know, first year teachers who were scared to death when they came, and of course had a difficult time staying. And you couldn't blame them because of so many things that were happening in school, and so many problems that parents and kids had by virtue of the fact that it was a black community. And of course, we were very anxious to see that change was made, and that the minority kids would have the same opportunity or an equal opportunity to other kids in the
Right.
city. And so that's, of course, was our main goal, to try to see that something would be done to keep them from feeling, you know,
Okay.
that people, not only the parents, but the kids, to feel that they were in a situation that was a very difficult situation for them to get out of. So, of course, I was very much interested in not only doing that, but also being an advocate for the mentally retarded. They would call mentally retarded at that time mentally handicapped, because they were not given the same type of education that the others had. And I certainly was very happy to get into that. And as I say, had one of the few credentials of a teacher at that particular time, because they didn't have special teachers who would teach the handicapped youngsters. But I did, and I was very successful in that area. And so we got to the point where there were teachers that were coming in that would be trained to do that, especially trained for that particular type of thing.
Were you involved in the mainstreaming movement, and were there particular school mainstreaming
Yes.
kids into the regular
Yes,
classroom?
absolutely, because they could.
Okay.
They could, and they could operate very efficiently
Okay.
into the regular grades.
Right. Did you work at the King Children's Center at all, or?
No, I
Okay,
didn't
no.
work
Okay.
at King's Children's Center.
I can remember one thing that's kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
One of the kids who had been sent as mentally retarded at one of these classes turned out to be one of the brightest kids in the whole school district.
Yeah.
Mm.
And another one was one of the greatest artists you have ever seen in your
Yeah?
life.
How-
It was
so
the
how-
actor Berkeley. Because they were, and they were kids that, well, really, some of them were not mentally handicapped. By virtue of all kinds of things, they were not able to function well in school.
Mhm.
But the main thing was to have teachers and people behind them who understood what was going
Okay.
on.
So do you feel the teacher training process was that crucial to?
Oh yes, oh
Okay.
yes, without a doubt, because the main part of the integration of the schools was teacher training,
Okay.
because teachers were not sensitive to the needs of minority youngsters. And of course, not only sensitive, but their attitudes again, their expectations were not what they should have been for youngsters, and we knew that. And said, you keep your expectations high, and the youngsters will respond to it. Because my attitude with the kids was always, I can. Yes, you can. Oh, yes, you can. One of those things. And
Okay.
they respond well to this, and the parents do too.
So the teachers had to be trained to
Absolutely.
expect.
We had teacher
high
training, which was a
expectations.
major
Okay.
part of the integration of the schools, and it was done on a regular basis.
Okay,
It
great.
was done on a regular basis, and a great deal of learning took place in that
Okay.
type of thing. We learned a great deal about teachers from various parts of the city, and they learned a great deal about what was going down in the south and west part of the city.
Okay. Well, maybe you could tell me something about of those early years, after your plan was set in motion.
Mm-hmm.
What were the results? Or what?
Well, there were many kinds of
Yeah.
results. There were problems, of course, because many people felt that they shouldn't have the responsibility. The responsibility of busing was on the youngsters from South Berkeley.
Okay.
And so the black parents were very upset about
Yeah,
that type of thing.
Their kids had to go
But-
to the Hills
right.
schools, the youngest
But were
ones.
willing to make the sacrifice so that the youngsters could have an equal education, because they were certainly not getting it in the southern part of the city.
Mhm.
And of course, other problems were white teachers were not used to having, black youngsters, and the behavior problems and that type of thing that they complained about. But teacher training certainly helped a great deal with that,
Okay.
because there were many things and Marie Fielder was still from Cal, worked with us on this, and she kept tab on what was going on, and we kept working on the diversity and the learning of cultures and that type of thing, so that teachers were well versed in this type of thing, and teachers knew what to expect. And when the kids found the teachers working together, it certainly made a great deal of difference with what was going on. And then, of course, black teachers started being sent to the Hill schools and that type of thing, and it worked out very well. So,
Did you see improvements in the resources for the schools down here in the flats?
oh,
areas?
absolutely, because there were resources, that they had never had before, that were being poured into the schools, and in fact, a lot more than they had down here to make it attractive for white
Yeah,
teachers
I
who
think
did not want to be here.
That was a tendency to do
Right.
a little more there.
Right,
Okay.
right, they
To make it
did.
Malcolm
attractive.
X.
And it was one of those things, and of course, we started getting teachers from, the same as going to any other school,
One little thing I noticed that was happening during that time that hadn't been happening before, but it's a small thing, but I think it might have done a lot of good. Kids, it was a usual thing for a group of kids to stay in a home for 2 or 3 nights here and there. They switched homes during this time.
Oh,
Yeah,
What do you mean?
particularly it was the old Lincoln School then, and Emerson School, and between Lincoln and Emerson had a real good, the staffs, the families, absolutely an excellent relationship, an excellent rapport between those two. And they were exchanging home visits between the youngsters
Okay.
and the parents.
And they went on a lot of visitor trips, things that the kids would mingle together other than at school.
Okay. Okay. Get it.
And Emerson School was the first school to ask for a black teacher.
Really?
Absolutely. First school
And
to ask for a black
yeah.
teacher. Before they even decided to, before they were talking about this in these little
Mm-hmm.
groups, and they said, do you have one that you can send to us now? You know, we will take whatever you have. They had a strong parent group at Emerson. And then we finally got a strong parent group at Lincoln. So the thing that went on between the families was fantastic, and of course affected the youngsters.
Mm-hmm. Great.
And
Was Emerson the first school to get a black principal too, or not?
it would, let me see which school got the first black principal. It had to be.
I can't remember which one was it.
Who got the first black principal? See, George Perry could give you every bit
Okay.
of this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Because
George
was
would
in
give you all that
Perry
stuff.
Okay.
type thing. I was here
Yeah.
down here trying to work in this area, but George had moved all over the city working with this type of thing, so he'll give you a much better
Okay.
perspective than I could on that.
Actually, I want to go back a little bit. I know when you moved here, it was in the 50s. So that was during the time of the restricted covenants. Is that still
Oh
okay?
yes,
Okay.
oh yes, oh yes.
Maybe we can talk a little bit about that.
Oh
That-
yes,
yeah.
oh yes, oh yes. You can tell me we couldn't
Well,
buy a house. We got this house because a friend of ours went to bat for us to get it.
Things weren't too bad in Berkeley, I don't think, but there were restrictive
Restrictions,
covenants
yes.
in Berkeley. But when we bought this house, there were there's a black lady staying next door, and a black lady on the other street over there. And I think we could have purchased in other places too.
Tom went to bat for us to get this house.
Yes.
Tom Mann.
Okay.
Tom, when we got here, we had a friend, Tom Mann, and he was in real estate. And he's the one who turned us on to this place. Matter of fact, insisted that we buy it. But he also insisted we buy another place up in the hills we didn't buy too.
Oh, really? Okay. Why did you not buy the place in the hills? I'm curious.
It was a lot. The helicopter, that builds the helicopters.
Oh, okay.
It was above there. And I said, Tom, I don't
So it
know.
really
You
wasn't,
know what this guy, all this place. We're making school teachers' salary.
Yeah. Yeah. It was.
And it was close because I was
And-
walking to school.
And that,
Right.
that was the worst
Working.
mistake I made.
Well, no,
Well,
I think, no, it
who knows?
wasn't.
I
No,
don't
it
know.
wasn't.
Yeah.
Well, see, I was against it. He was doing
Yeah.
that. But the
Yeah.
nice part about it is that I wanted to stay in South Berkeley because I got to like the people around, and I thought, well, it's simpler for us. It's a simpler life to live than hills didn't bother me at all. And of course, after we got in here, another friend of ours who was on the city planning commission, Carl Goldsmith, said, don't you dare move from that place that you're in now. Yeah, I know you're probably going to be wanting to go to the hills like everybody else. And I said, not I. Frank is interested in that. But he said, don't dare move because that's the up and coming part of the city. And he said, and eventually they're going to develop that place near where you are down there. And everybody's going to want to go. The businesses is going to be coming in down that way. And you want to buy property around there because it's going to be one of the up and coming parts of the city. And he was right.
Yeah.
He was
Berkeley
right.
Bowl moved in, and it's
Yeah.
up a bit.
And
Yeah.
at that time, of course, the old BART. I mean,
Well-
the train was running down Airline Street. But
Oh,
that's
yeah.
another story.
Yeah, train
Okay.
ran down
Tell,
there.
tell
Oh,
me a
yeah.
little bit about that.
Oh,
what it
yeah,
was
Frank
like.
can tell you a lot
Yeah.
about
Tell
that
me.
because he was on the committee with the
Right.
mayor.
Oh, yeah. I co-chaired the undergrounding of BART for Berkeley with Mayor Wallace Johnson,
Yeah.
Okay.
See, when BART-
and
they didn't want to underground it. They
so we had meetings. We met down here at Regina's Chevrolet place down here and a few other places, and it was just a nice committee, and everybody liked it. As a matter of fact, when it came to a vote, people voted 80% in favor of paying
it
the extra
underground.
money to underground.
Underground.
Berkeley had never done anything like that before.
Well, that train was running right down Adeline Street.
That he would have been running right
All that
there.
It would have been running
Yeah.
right down
Yes.
Adeline.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was
Wow.
still running down Adeline Street.
And that, would you remember about what year that was?
Oh, my Lord.
I think it was the
Yeah,
60.
it,
The
Really
year
70s?
before they started
Yeah.
building, a
Right,
few years.
right, a few
Yeah.
years before they started building.
A couple
So,
of years, I
yeah.
guess.
yeah,
So-
we watched all of that change.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, the old Lauren district and all it became the. Yeah, I tell you, things began to change in that whole district down there. You know, businesses came in and what have you.
Uh-huh. What was that like in the Lauren district when you first moved in?
Very, very few businesses in that
Oh, yeah.
section.
Which was,
Some people down here, you know, in South Berkeley.
yeah. Oh, I mean, right on
The old
Adeline
Lauren,
Street.
yes,
Adeline,
mhm,
yeah.
the Adeline Street district. Very
They
few.
had a few businesses, but not as many as they
Not
have
as
now.
many. The drugstore was
Mhm.
there. Drugstore on the corner, the beauty shop.
So
That's about all.
by the time you moved in, the streetcars were gone, though, right?
The
No,
street-
no,
The
no.
streetcars. The
When
streetcars.
we moved in here,
The streetcar
oh,
was
you
still
mean
running.
that old train that came down Adeline
Yeah.
Street?
So
Oh,
that
no.
was running.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
that
It
was
stopped
running.
Shortly after we moved
Shortly
in, it
after we
stopped.
moved in,
Oh, okay.
because
Yeah.
they stopped and they got, you know, when Bart.
It would just go up. It didn't, but it stopped up here at Shattuck,
Okay.
where Adeline had Shattuck. They didn't go any further.
Okay. That was the end.
Yeah. But that used to be a coal yard. I mean,
Oh,
next
that's what I heard,
where
Yeah.
Berkeley Bowl is.
Coal yard.
Oh yeah, Pacific and
Well, we say fuel because it sold oil and all that kind of stuff.
Huh.
it was a coal yard, and not only a coal yard that was unsightly over there that we had to face, but also Pacific. What was it? Had a huge sign that they advertised, a huge advertising
Right there on
sign
the
that they
corner,
had
right.
right there on
Uh-huh.
the corner.
Okay.
And we
Southern
kept saying,
Pacific.
we're sick and tired of facing this. So here comes the formation of the Newberry Neighborhood Association, which was the second neighborhood association in the city.
Mhm.
San Pablo Neighborhood Association was the first, and that's why I want you to talk to Doris Tabor,
Okay.
because she's in the San
San Pablo.
Pablo area down there and knows what went on
Okay.
in that area. But we got together, Frank and Lauren Norwood and somebody else around the corner said, look, we gotta get rid of this. We can't take this any longer. And the only way City Hall's gonna listen to us is for us to get together. And we did, and we found out that the San Pablo Neighborhood Association,
Is this okay?
is it recorded?